Hey, welcome to the latest episode of The Sherveen Show, where we connect the dots between tech, startups, business, and society. Today is April 9th, 2025. It is a chaotic day. Trump just put his 90-day postponement on tariffs that were announced earlier this week. We are in chaos period in the markets at large, so we're going to pay attention to what we can pay attention to. Let's begin by talking about stuff that's happening in the world of AI. Google's made a ton of announcements today about different products across this Gemini suite in audio and video, including a new TPU, its tensor processing unit for test-time compute inference for its AI models. I want to simplify to the two things that I think were the most interesting that it announced. So the first is the launch of an agent-to-agent interoperability protocol. So the whole idea is they want AI agents to be able to collaborate with each other across workflows, across companies better than they do today. Today AI agents are brand new. And so if you are building in that space and you want the AI agent you have on your platform to be interoperable with, let's say, an AI agent built by another company or that lives inside another product, right now that's difficult. An engineer has to actually do manual work to understand how both of those agents work, how they should connect with each other, exchange information, update each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to make something cross-platform is difficult and again requires manual engineering time and the tying together of different rules and different expectations between, let's say, an AI agent that Google builds that allows people to have automated workflows with Google Docs and an AI agent, let's say, in Salesforce or in some other marketing tool. If you want those two things to talk to each other, again, there will need to be an engineer on either team or in a third party who understands both agents and gets them to actually communicate and collaborate effectively. With this agent-to-agent framework, the whole idea, and this is a good idea, and Google's just trying to be out in front in setting up what the protocol is going to look like, agents will publish agent cards that say, hey, here's what I'm capable of. Here's what I can do. Here's the information that I need. It standardizes what task coordination can look like and what syncing can look like so that agents don't need to learn, hey, how do you take in new information? How do you take in time zones? How do you take in the amount of steps needed to complete something? But instead, again, there will be standards built in and allows agents to coordinate again more effectively. Think of all of this like a design pattern. I think this is really significant because this accelerates the efficacy that agents can have if companies take this seriously. Then we're talking about being able to have really practical workflows and really practical products much quicker than we would have if all of this required manual piping. Just as an example, let's say we're building a startup in the hiring space to build AI automation and agents for scheduling interviews. And let's imagine that Google had an AI agent that analyzes resumes, and Greenhouse, the applicant tracking system, had an AI agent that allows you to manage the status of candidates and the workflows around job descriptions. And let's say a startup was trying to build an AI agent for scheduling interviews, like mentioned, on top of companies and their internal calendar systems. Today, again, the engineer at the startup building, this product that it wants to serve to other people would have to understand each of those agents, get an integration, figure out how to make them work seamlessly together, triage how they might miscommunicate or not understand how to coordinate on tasks. But in the agent-to-agent framework, each agent would have a card that described exactly what it does, exactly what info it needs to actually perform an activity, how it returns a response, and how this might happen over many agents, coordinating on a very long workflow, which includes keeping all of those agents in sync. And especially since they're agents, the whole concept of an AI agent and agentic workflows is that they are self-directive. They can edit their steps. They can work in parallel. They don't need human intervention unless you want human intervention as part of the loop. These agents can share permission with each other. They can verify exactly what's going on as they parallel process. They can speak the same language. Again, they share a system design. I think this is pretty cool and pretty smart. I think it's going to rapidly accelerate the speed at which we see agentic workflows that, again, across platform and can do really awesome things. Okay, and again, there are a lot of announcements that came out of Google around deep research, Gemini, their TPU, a bunch of stuff to look at. But another one that I thought was really practical and more short-term interesting is their new audio features inside Google Docs. So if you've been using Notebook LM at all, or if you've seen people talk about it, and there's an audio overview feature where basically if you upload a bunch of documents, a bunch of context into Notebook LM, you could press a button and basically turn whatever you're bringing to the table into a podcast. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. And now they're allowing you to do that inside of Google Docs. And this might feel like a very trivial update to a feature that, again, people could use in Notebook LM already. But I think this is where you get a feature like this to really get mass adoption. Put it inside people's existing workflows. People use Google Docs all the time. There's a tremendous amount of Google Docs being created every day or being referenced every day inside of companies, inside of workflows, or for personal projects, for productivity. Students live in Google Docs in a lot of ways. And so if there's just a button you can press to get an audio overview out of your Google Docs, I think we're going to see a big adaptation here that could be behavior changing in a more more fundamental way than a lot of other AI products. But you can imagine all the ways in which this, again, is really interesting in existing workflows. If you use Google Docs and you have a presentation tomorrow, maybe you want to do an audio overview so you can hear the content and kind of modify exactly how you're going to pitch it. Again, because it's in the existing workflows, I think this is really interesting. So maybe you send a report to your boss, and in a former world, they never would have read it. It would have gone, great, thanks for sending. Now they just press a button, they've got an audio overview, they can actually digest what you sent. You're about to give a presentation tomorrow, it's off of a Google Doc, you're going to the gym, press a button, you've got an audio overview so you can review your content. You start a new job, you receive onboarding material in Google Docs, press the audio button, now it's a podcast version of that onboarding doc. This is the stuff that could get real big mass adoption in a way other products are approaching the audio space and the text-to-speech space haven't been able to grab in the same way. Okay, next up, Anthropic released a new plan for Claude. It's Claude Max. It's got 2 tiers, a $100 a month tier and a $200 a month tier. We're going to have more usage, so it's going to get you past some of the usage limitations that currently exist within Claude. Users are going to get more usage, so they're going to get past some of the rate limiting that happens inside Claude. They're going to get access to new features and models before anybody else. They get priority access during high traffic periods, and there might be extended thinking modes for their reasoning models. They're following a little bit after OpenAI here, right? So ChatGPT Pro, which I'm a subscriber to, is a $200 a month product that allows you access to O1 Pro. Their most advanced reasoning model allows you a lot more prompts into deep research, their agentic research product, and a bunch of other stuff. Claude's is less compelling by its nature. There isn't as much going on in the Anthropic system as OpenAI's. Obviously, people sometimes prefer the Claude model for certain activities, although right now it's not necessarily state-of-the-art at any particular activity. It's still number 2 or, depending on the day, number 1 in code, but Gemini 2.5 Pro from Google has really shown to be an effective product in that area. But I think this is yet another step in the long-running expectation that a lot of people in the tech community have had, that we're going to see higher-end products, whether it's luxury products or high-productivity products, where people want more out of the tools that they're using. But the issue for these companies is it costs a tremendous amount of money, right? And so if they've got reasoning models or if they've got advanced models that cost a lot to run, it's really difficult for them to stick that in a $20 a month tier. But they have customers who are begging them, and you see it on X every single day. People will go, hey, I would pay you any amount of money. Let me get more access to this model. There are people who create a lot of different accounts and have multiple subscriptions because it's the only way to get more usage out of certain companies' AI models. So this is them a little bit testing the price elasticity of their customer. Again, they're a little bit in cover of OpenAI having already approached this with ChatGPT Pro. The thing I'm most interested in seeing is, can other businesses other than OpenAI, which just has a vast majority of the market share, do something at $100 a month or $200 a month? I would have expected Anthropic to come out with something like $50 a month with increased usage limits. But at 100 or 200, you either have to be a power user of all power users who really believes that they're going to mostly use Claude, even as models change and update every single day. You have to have infinite budget, or Anthropic needs to build a lot more into their product, because Google and OpenAI have things like, again, deep research. OpenAI has their operator agent, and obviously it offers image generation now too, with higher rate limits for those on the more premium plans. So we'll see. Again, an interesting test. We'd love to see more come out of Anthropic for their Max models. Last story in the world of AI, it was really interesting to see the CEO of Shopify publish an internal memo. It was apparently being leaked, and so he decided to just post it on X about how AI usage is, quote, their baseline expectation. This is a March 20th memo where the fundamental mandate, the fundamental expectation that he's putting on his team, and this is across the Shopify team, is that everybody is embracing AI in a deep and fundamental way. And there are CEOs who have talked about really trying to help their teams push forward in AI adoption, putting AI first. But I don't think we've seen many memos like this published in full, so just a few interesting snippets from it. Quote, what we've learned so far is that using AI well is a skill that needs to be carefully learned by using it a lot. He goes on to say, this is the first time that we're seeing, quote, the tools become 10x themselves, presumably talking about either internal tools or products that they're using for internal productivity that have become just so much more capable than they were just a year ago. He then sets up a set of what this means, bullets about exactly what he expects the team to do. Quote, using AI effectively is now a fundamental expectation of everyone at Shopify. We'll add AI usage questions to our performance and peer review questionnaire. Before asking for more headcount and resources, teams must demonstrate why they can't get what they want done using AI. And this applies to everyone in the seniority stack. This is smart. At the end of the day, it is hard to be a very good user of AI. And so forcing your company into learning about how to do it by having them do it as part of their expectation, as part of their mandate, is a good idea. There's a point in time early on in the ChatGPT cycle in 2022 or 2023 where I told my team, hey, I expect for the next week, I expect you to have a window open at all times with ChatGPT or on a second monitor, because you need to build the muscle. You need to get good at using it. You need to get good at learning what works and what doesn't. You need to have an instinct for opening ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. And obviously, it was really interesting to hear that one of the things that they're putting forward is now you're going to need to justify a headcount and why you can't get the job done that you're hiring for with AI. That's something that a lot of CEOs have kind of hinted at and implemented as part of a higher level strategy. But again, seeing it illustrated or written out so clearly like this is pretty interesting. And I think is going to be a trend that we're going to see across different companies looking for the cost savings and the upside of what comes by being this directive about AI used internally. Okay, a couple other stories that I think are interesting. The first is that startup Colossal Biosciences, which was raised like $500 million, has actually unextincted, de-extincted, I don't know if there's a verb here, but they've reconstructed the genetics of a dire wolf. Dire wolves have been extinct for over 10,000 years, but they're back. Let's listen. Beyond being super cute, I just think this is a super interesting and cool company. The science here is not just about, okay, let's resurrect cute animals or, simply resurrect extinct animals for the sake of bringing extinct things back. But you can imagine this enables a different type of conservation moving forward. What this means for our ability to control our biodiversity, what it means for our ability to protect certain species. When we bring back biology and concepts of science that we have lost in time, that might also affect how we develop medicine, how we understand other scientific breakthroughs and energy. Maybe we also build Jurassic Park along the way and we all die, but I just think this is a really interesting company and it's something to watch out for. I wonder what they're going to actually resurrect next. They're working on a whole bunch of different species, but it's a really interesting project in bioscience and genetics. Shout out to them. Okay, next thing, Carta, which is the cap table management startup, helps startups and founders track all of the stakeholders in their businesses and distribute equity. They always have access to interesting data, and they just released a bootstrapped solo founder chart. In other words, it's the rate of startups that have one founder and no VC funding. It was 22.2% in 2015. It was 29.3% in 2020, and now it's 38%. 38% of the startups using Carta have no VC funding and one founder. And the narrative here, and this is something that's been talked about in venture capital and the startup ecosystem for the past few years, is that more than ever, not only because the knowledge of how to build a company and build a startup has become proliferated, but because of AI and because of the mood on venture kind of being in a downturn, a solo individual is able to build and scale a business. Whether as a one-person band, literally operating just themselves or maybe with contractors, or starting as one founder, no funding, and hiring people off of their own balance sheet, off of revenue. And this is really significant. It's this idea that there is an ability for people to do a lot more with less, that AI can really turn somebody into a far more productive version of themselves. And again, some of this might be a look at venture capital and how it's done over the years, both in terms of outcomes, but also how founders view venture capital and venture capitalists as collaborators, but not just off the notion of, okay, maybe some people are looking at venture capital differently in a negative way, but they might just be looking at it as more optional. They might be looking at it as a less attractive financial option because unlike 5 years ago, you don't need to hire an immediate team of 5 to execute on finding product market fit or going to market for the first time. Really interesting trend. Again, in the theme of doing more with less. Love when Carta releases this sort of data. Final note is just kind of a fun one for me. Obviously, a few weeks ago, OpenAI released this new image generation model. Took the internet by storm for a few days. Midjourney last week released V7, their latest image generation model. I just want to point out how good image generation, obviously we've seen how good large language models are getting, but even image generation is getting to the point where this stuff is usable. So just as an example, about a week and a half ago, in just about 20 minutes, I created these 20 ad concepts that you can see on screen if you're watching. And if you can't, the things that I'm showing on screen, whether or not you agree with some of the creative choices, look like they're ads made by top agencies. There are real people in them. The hands are not malformed. The text is laid out nicely. The colors are there. The polish is there. And it's just me talking to ChatGPT about the ideas I had, the concepts I had to flesh out briefs, and then me pasting that into Sora, which also has the new 4 image generation model that most people are using in ChatGPT. And this is first pass stuff. I had 4 variations for each of the concepts on screen. I just picked the best one. So I didn't need to prompt it a ton of times to get the right results. I didn't need to edit or polish any of these images. Obviously, some of them can use a little bit of polish with things like punctuation, but that's beyond the point. Again, this stuff is so good. I think we're moments away from seeing, for example, marketers embrace this in a way they haven't quite yet. There have been proof of concepts around this, but the image generation models have not been good enough, for example, to give you one-off usable full display ads. And by the way, all of this falling into ChatGPT, where you can have a certain amount of queries for free or being paying anywhere from $20 to $200 a month for a variety of features, including this image generation model. You don't even need to go to a dedicated tool and pay an additional SaaS fee. So we go and think about, what Toby pointed out earlier, Shopify CEO, around his team using AI, or what's coming out of image generation products and companies out there. It's just, again, rapidly accelerating. If it wasn't for the fact that we have, a crazy criminal dictator man distracting us every day, I think we'd spend a lot more time celebrating just how fast this new technology is improving and what it can potentially do. Both good and bad. We have to be having both of those discussions for our society at large. That's all for now. May the rest of your week not be as chaotic as it's been in the beginning half of the week. See you next time.